Hello, crafty friends. My name is Jessica, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I have a card for you where we're going to be doing a debossed technique using alcohol markers, a brayer, and some inks. So, I went ahead and got started by using the beautiful embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp with this Lily of the Valley. And as you can see, I turned it over and we're going to be coloring in the debossed side of the image. Most people tend to want to color the puffed out part of the paper, but we are kind of mixing it up. There's a technique right now that's going around that's pretty popular where you're coloring the debossed images and then embossing it, or you're coloring it, then embossing it so that it's debossed, and then using an ink pad to swipe over the top. But this is just a little bit different. We're going to go ahead and use these alcohol markers. I use Ohuhu markers, but any alcohol marker or any marker would work for that matter, any kind of coloring technique you'd like to use. I'm just going in with a very, very simple color blend, two colors, occasionally, maybe a third in some instances, but I'm keeping it really simple. I've got the packaging image over there on the left so that I can reference it, but just know that when you're using a reference and you're coloring on the debossed portion, it is flipped. But I wanted to make sure that I was getting the leaves appropriately colored, and there are a couple of the leaves in the image that have a part of the leaf bent over. So I wanted to be aware of that while I was coloring to make sure that I get my shadows and my highlights somewhat accurate. Now, I do not tend to pay attention to that when I'm doing these quick coloring videos or quick coloring for that matter. So I'm trying not to do too much in depth just because tend to be a little bit more of a free spirit with my coloring. And that's what you can kind of see. Now keep in mind, I'm trying to be careful where I'm putting the alcohol. I don't want to go too much outside of the image, so I'm trying my best to stay within it. Because I'm going to be using the brown inks, I wanted to be mindful of that, especially when I got that darker green marker out. And I do apologize for my head getting in the image here, but sometimes though when I'm coloring, I like to see over the top and I was struggling a little bit. But like I said, we're gonna make sure that we're not going too far outside of the images because while we are using a brown, it's not a super dark brown, and I don't plan on getting it very saturated with ink. When I've done this technique before, I did the ink pad swipe, but I'm gonna be mixing it up with the brayer, and I haven't done that yet. So we're gonna kind of learn together, but I really love the way that it turned out. For the paper I'm using today, this is Neenah 80-pound Classic Crest. This is a great paper to use for alcohol markers. I do get a little bit of bleeding sometimes when I oversaturate a certain area, but for the most part, I tend to love this paper for all of my alcohol marker coloring. So now I'm just going in and I wanted the lily of the valley flowers to stay white, but to give them a little bit of depth, I'm going in with one of the lightest shades of gray that I have in this set. I'm doing a focus up on the bell part up at the top and at the bottom. And then I'm using my colorless blender just to kind of soften those edges out since I wanted to keep some of the white for the highlight. When I was done with that, I noticed it needed a little bit more definition. So now I'm going in with just a little bit more of a warmer toned gray to ensure that I'm getting that shadowed depth feel. And then we're going to go through it one more time with the colorless blender. These Ohuhu markers tend to dry back much lighter, and sometimes I forget that. And so when the card gets to the very end, I wish I would have gone just a tad bit darker with the gray, but looking back, mm, of course, is always easier said than done. I went ahead and layered it back into the embossing folder and sent it through one more time just to ensure that it was all crisp after coloring and that everything was puffed out. I did have a thought that maybe it would stay in the embossing folder so that I could brayer right in the folder, but this worked out better. It would have shifted a little bit more, and so I went ahead and put it on this sticky mat very gently just to hold it in place so that I could have it lay flat. So now we're going in with the brayer with the Positively Saturated Latte, and I'm just inking it up and then swiping over. What's fun about this technique is you're going to get a little bit of the brown transferring to the veins on the leaves, which just adds to the dimension. Now I'm trying to be very careful because I have this stuck on a sticky mat and this brayer doesn't have a lot of give. I'm getting those highlight sections where the ink isn't laying, but I really loved this look, so I'm okay with it. If you didn't want those highlights or the inconsistencies with the coloring and you wanted it to be more solid, I would recommend taking an ink pad directly to it because the ink pad is smushy and it's going to smush into those areas where you're going to want that color, where the brayer is definitely just hitting the paper that's higher up than the rest. So that's the panel after inking it. These inks, they look dark now, but they will continue to dry back. And you'll see that at the end that the last color that I put on there, Mocha, does lighten up quite a bit. Now, I didn't like that I had some white lines, so I just went back in with the lightest green color just to kind of kiss those little white marks away. I didn't get them all. I just focused on the leaves because I didn't like that being so stark white. I really love how the browns play with this greens that I decided to use for the greenery. But another really great trio of inks for the background would be the new navy inks that recently came out. To add a little bit more playfulness, I went ahead and spritzed some water onto my surface and then I'm picking it up and splattering. These inks are water reactive, so wherever those splatters hit, they're going to bleach the ink. And so you get this kind of distressed look towards the back of this panel. I had put a question up on my Instagram asking what individuals wanted to see for my next card. And one of the suggestions from one of my fellow followers was a vintage card. And that's kind of what I was going for with this background. Now that we've got that panel done, we're going to go ahead and cut out this Swoopy Love You die. I went ahead and cut it out of a black cardstock as then a 110-pound Neenah 3 times because I think stacking dimensions is the best way to go. This one was a little finicky because of it being so scripty and just a little bit loose on the lettering. It got a little hard to get them to lay on top of each other nicely, but it's okay. It all works out in the end. So I'm using just a little bit of liquid glue to go ahead and adhere these together. But I just want to bring your attention back to that panel. If you zoom back just a few minutes, you'll see as I put on that mocha how dark it was on the panel and now how much lighter it's gotten as it's dried back. So I encourage you to do that just to see the difference on how these inks react. I do a color blend series with these inks and I will link a playlist above to take you there if you're interested, but they're really fun to play with. And the way that they dry back is absolutely gorgeous. So now we're going to go ahead and let those dies dry. I like to use stamp blocks to ensure that I'm putting some pressure onto them. And then while those were working their magic to adhere, I went ahead and folded my card base to get it ready. We're just going to finish it now. I put way too much glue on it and there's a little bit of a clip I had to cut out because I had to go in and do a little doctoring to get that glue off. I am an over adhesor through and through. Whether it's foam tape or liquid tape, it is hard to cut back. So I did decide that I wanted a little bit of a border around this panel. So I'm trimming it down to go ahead and create that border. And then to just add some extra dimension, we're going to go ahead and pop this panel up. I also thought this would be best because of how I used the debossed side. Using this foam tape would allow the panel to stick better than if I was to use a tape roller or even liquid glue. This ensures a better adhesive contact to the back of the card or to the card base. So we're going to go ahead and put that together. One of the hardest things when making cards on video is to ensure that your panel is correctly lined up. And I see here I'm a little high on the top, but that's me being overly picky, not a big deal. So now we're going to go ahead and build this card. Here I am fiddling, trying to decide where do I want to put the script. This is a part of my process in every card. I never go into it knowing exactly where I'm going to put sentiments or embellishments for that matter. So I just take the time to just kind of push it around until it feels pleasing to me. We're going to add some gems, and then that's going to go ahead and wrap the card up for today. Thank you for joining me. Below, I have all of the items that I use to create this card linked in the description. I do use affiliate links, and what that means is that if you click on a link and shop with me, I do receive a small commission at no cost to you. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this card, and please leave me a comment below. And I just want to let you know to take care.